The Black Sea for centuries, a crossroads of empires, a stage where power is proven and lost. And in 2025, it became the arena for a strike so daring, so unexpected, that it shook the naval world to its core. A Russian warship, once a symbol of dominance, lay smoldering in the dark waters. Flames licked the night sky. Sailors abandoned ship, some clinging to debris, others swallowed by the waves. What had brought down this multi-million-dollar vessel? Not a rival fleet, not advanced fighter jets, not nuclear submarines. It was something far smaller, far cheaper, far more terrifying in its simplicity. Ukrainian drones. A swarm of remotely piloted machines, each carrying explosives, moved with precision, slipping under radar, weaving through gunfire, and striking with surgical force. When the first explosion tore through steel, it wasn't just a warship that was destroyed. It was an illusion, the illusion that Russia's fleet was untouchable. And what happened next would change the course of the Black Sea War. To understand why this strike mattered, you have to understand what this ship represented. It wasn't just a hunk of floating steel with weapons bolted to its deck. It was Russia's projection of power in the Black Sea, a symbol of dominance, intimidation, and control. This warship bristled with weaponry, caliber cruise missiles capable of striking targets hundreds of kilometers inland, heavy naval cannons that could shred smaller craft, and a network of layered defenses, radar, close-in weapon systems, and surface-to-air missiles designed to repel any attacker. It was, at least on paper, a fortress at sea, but beyond its firepower, it played an even larger role. Control of the sea lanes. Every time this warship left port, it sent a message. Merchant vessels hesitated to move, convoys rerouted, grain shipments. Ukraine's lifeline to the world stalled. Ukraine is one of the world's largest exporters of wheat, corn, and sunflower oil. When Russian warships enforced their blockade, the consequences rippled far beyond the Black Sea. In the Middle East, bread prices climbed. In Africa, food insecurity worsened. Even in Europe, global markets shook. All because a single Russian warship could sit on the horizon like a predator, daring commercial ships to challenge it. For Russia's admirals, this was by design. These ships weren't just military tools, they were instruments of political leverage. Every missile they carried, every patrol they made, reinforced the Kremlin's narrative. We control these waters. We can choke Ukraine whenever we wish. And that sense of dominance was deeply rooted in Russia's naval tradition. These vessels were the heirs of an empire. The Russian Navy had always carried symbolic weight, stretching back to the Tsars, who fought for access to warm-water ports through the Soviet fleet that projected Cold War power across the globe. To the Russian command, the Black Sea Fleet wasn't just practical, it was personal. It was prestige. That's why losing one was unthinkable. A blow, not just to strategy, but to pride. And in their minds, it wasn't possible. They had the defenses, they had the technology, they had the numbers. Even after the loss of the Moskva, the fleet's flagship sunk in 2022 by Ukrainian Neptune missiles, Russian commanders convinced themselves it was a fluke, an accident of bad luck or poor leadership. An embarrassment, yes, but not a sign of systemic weakness. To them, the Moskva was a cautionary tale, not a pattern. They doubled their patrols, they upgraded radar coverage, they reinforced vulnerable ships, they told themselves it won't happen again. But Ukraine was watching, and Ukraine was adapting. If missiles had worked once, why not try something else? Something even harder to predict, something impossible to stop. That's where the drones came in. On the surface, they looked crude, fast boats loaded with explosives, guided remotely across the waves. But their strength wasn't in elegance, it was in numbers, it was in unpredictability. Unlike missiles, which fly straight and can be intercepted, drones could maneuver in real time. They could zigzag, hug the waterline, hide beneath radar. They could travel in swarms, overwhelming even the most advanced defenses. And for every drone destroyed, another would keep coming at a fraction of the cost of a single Russian missile. For Ukraine, drones were the great equalizer. They didn't need billion-dollar warships or advanced submarines. They didn't need fleets of aircraft carriers. They just needed small, smart, expendable machines. And here's the part Russia underestimated most. Ukraine's drones weren't built in massive defense factories with years-long procurement cycles. They were built in hidden workshops, garages, even basements. As fast as Russia tried to adapt, Ukraine's engineers could tweak, refine, and innovate. Every strike wasn't just an attack. It was a test, a lesson, a data point that would make the next swarm deadlier than the last. So, while Russian admirals looked at their maps with confidence, seeing their patrol routes, their blockade lines, their safe zones, something else was happening in the shadows. In secret facilities along Ukraine's coast, engineers hunched over workbenches. Sparks flew from welding torches, explosives were fitted into watertight shells. Cameras were mounted to capture every frame of the hunt. Each drone was prepared not just as a weapon, but as a statement that no ship, no matter how mighty, no matter how well defended, could truly be safe. And so the stage was set. One warship, sailing with arrogance, believing itself untouchable. And a swarm of machines, born in secrecy, designed with one purpose, to humiliate a superpower. It began in silence. The Russian warship sailed under the stars, its wake glimmering in the moonlight. The night was calm, too calm. Inside the ship, life followed routine. Sailors patrolled the decks. Officers reviewed radar screens. The engine room roared with steady power. Some men smoked on the deck, staring at the horizon, while others rested in cramped bunks. Nothing suggested danger. Nothing suggested death was minutes away. But far beyond the horizon, hidden from sight, Ukraine's plan was already in motion. From a concealed coastal launch site, small sea drones were deployed fast, low, almost invisible. Each packed with explosives, each controlled by operators who watched every wave through remote cameras. In a dimly lit Ukrainian control room, young operators leaned forward, eyes glued to screens. Their fingers tightened on joysticks. Their voices were calm, steady, rehearsed. Drone 1 on course. Drone 2 holding formation. Target locked. The drones skimmed the water's surface, leaving only faint ripples. They weren't missiles. They weren't aircraft. They were ghosts too small for radar, too fast to be dismissed. Minutes passed. The Russian ship continued its patrol, oblivious. And then the first blip appeared on radar. A junior operator on the Russian side squinted at his screen. Something tiny, moving irregularly. He frowned, uncertain. Fishing boat? Seagulls? Sea clutter? He reported it anyway. His superior brushed it off at first, but the blip grew. More appeared. And suddenly, alarms blared. Contact! Multiple inbound objects! On deck, Russian sailors scrambled. Spotlights roared to life. Machine gunners swung their barrels toward the dark waves. The captain barked orders. Open fire! Tracer rounds lit the night, streaking into the sea. The thunder of heavy guns echoed. Splashes erupted as bullets tore through the waves. But the drones kept coming. Fast, agile, too small to lock onto, too many to hit at once. And then impact. The first drone slammed into the starboard side. The explosion rocked the vessel, sending men sprawling across the deck. Fire erupted instantly, smoke billowing into the sky. Before damage crews could respond, the second drone hit. Then the third. The warship shuddered violently. Steel plates buckled, flames engulfed compartments. Ammunition below deck began to detonate, each blast ripping new holes into the ship's body. Panic consumed the crew. Some tried to fight the fires, others rushed to lifeboats. Shouts of confusion and terror echoed through the chaos. "Abandon ship!" someone screamed. But it was already too late. The mighty warship was broken. Listing hard to one side, fires out of control, its proud silhouette reduced to a burning wreck against the horizon. And all because of drones no bigger than a jet ski. The morning after, the world woke to images that no one could ignore. Satellite photos showed a Russian warship gutted, its once proud frame scarred and broken, smoke still rising like a funeral pyre in the Black Sea. For Russia, it was humiliation, raw and undeniable. State media scrambled to contain the narrative. Anchors spoke of a minor incident, hinting at mechanical failure, or even suggesting that the ship had been targeted by Western weapons, not Ukrainian ingenuity. But those words rang hollow, because videos were already spreading online. Grainy night vision footage of explosions tearing through steel, clips of sailors diving desperately into dark waters, flames rising high against the horizon as the ship rolled to one side. The kind of images propaganda couldn't erase. The truth was out, and it burned brighter than the wreckage itself. The shock wasn't in the loss of a single vessel, no matter how costly it was. The real shock was in what it meant. If drones, cheap, expendable, homemade machines could destroy this warship, then no vessel in Russia's fleet was safe. Not the smaller patrol boats, not the heavily armed frigates, not even the crown jewels of the Black Sea Fleet, guarded by layers of defenses. The myth of naval invulnerability had been shattered overnight, and the effects were immediate. Russian naval commanders, once so confident, suddenly grew cautious. Patrol routes were altered. Warships pulled back from contested waters, retreating toward the safety of heavily defended ports. Convoys that once sailed aggressively began hugging coastlines, steering clear of known Ukrainian drone paths. Each new deployment was preceded by hesitation, a creeping awareness that somewhere, unseen, another swarm might already be on the way. For the sailors themselves, the change was even more profound. Men who once stood proudly on the decks now scanned the horizon with dread. Every ripple of the waves, every unexplained radar flicker carried a question. Is that another drone? Are we next? This wasn't just about technology, it was about psychology. Fear had crept into the Russian Navy, not fear of missiles or jets, but fear of the invisible. For the first time, sailors stared into the vast, dark waters of the Black Sea and truly wondered, what's out there? What's waiting for us? For Ukraine, the strike was more than a tactical win. It was validation. A clear, undeniable message to the world. Ingenuity could level the battlefield. Courage and creativity could outmatch size and budget. Ukraine didn't need to outbuild Russia's navy, it only needed to outthink it. And here lay the twist. This was no isolated event. The destroyed warship wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Because Ukraine wasn't stopping. Workshops were already producing more drones faster, smarter, more destructive than the last. Each successful strike wasn't just a victory. It was fuel. It meant more funding, more support, more confidence. Every drone that reached its target taught operators something new. Every warship damaged or sunk sent ripples through the Russian chain of command. And as Ukraine scaled up, Russia faced an ugly truth. It couldn't build ships as fast as Ukraine could build drones. The nightmare was only beginning. The destruction of this warship was more than just a battlefield victory. It was a signal to Russia, to Ukraine, and to the world. It signaled that the age of giants was ending, that billion-dollar warships could be humbled by machines worth a fraction of the cost. That warfare was no longer about who had the biggest guns, but who could adapt the fastest. For Russia, it was a bitter lesson. For Ukraine, a triumph. And for the rest of the world, a glimpse of the future, a future where small, smart, relentless machines change the way wars are fought. The Black Sea will never be the same. And neither will the Russian Navy. Because on that night, it wasn't just a warship that was destroyed. It was an illusion, the illusion of invincibility. And what happened next proved that even the mightiest fleet can be brought to its knees by the hum of drones in the dark.